And our first amazing keynote speaker is a professional disruptor, a futurologist, and a digital philosopher. So he looks at emerging global trends and identifies the strategic implications and explains them in a way that is relevant, actionable, and industry agnostic. So ladies and gentlemen, for our first keynote speech of the day, which is all about how will tech impact the way to plan for the future, please give a very, very loud, warm welcome to our first keynote speaker, Aric Dromi. Thank you so much.
It's not on. Is it on? Yes. I'm not sure I actually want to do the keynote after that introduction, but very funny. Thinking Head decided that my original title, Professional Troublemaker, will scare a lot of people, so they changed it into Professional Disruptor. But it is Troublemaker, I promise you that. So I would like you all to stand up for a second, because I was booked in an hotel 45 minutes away from here, and I woke up really early. Raise your hands. Yeah, feel stupid, because I need everyone to identify with how stupid I feel on stages. Thank you. My daughter is a very, she's 18 and she's very, very introvert. And I was a very introvert kid. And we came up with this exercise when I'm trying to teach her how to stand and talk to people and not have social phobias. And she says, you know what, maybe if you can ask the people to do something stupid and take a picture and share it with me, it will and we are doing it for the past 3 years. So thank you for helping an 18 girl to feel much better. Do I have my slides? Maybe I will have them in a... So what do... Just click my name? Technology. Wonderful thing. So a few months ago, I founded an organization with some friends that is called the Dead Rabbit Society, which is of course, it's a take on the Dead Poet Society, on Alice in Wonderland without the pedophilia, and with you have to be honest, and around Martin Scorsese, The Gangs of New York. And the entire purpose of the Dead Rabbit Society is to come and challenge the status quo. And one of the things we found out that the best way to challenge the status quo is by making people feel uncomfortable, right? This is how we challenge things. Imagine going into a hotel and when that's supposed to work, yes, and finding this in the, right? I didn't have the pleasure of encountering that yet, but I've been in these type of situations before, and I'm asking often people like, who is most uncomfortable here? The person that his ass is out, the person that pull his pants down, or the person that is just diving for the ball? Think about that, because we tend to ignore these things. How about coming home and finding your spouse in bed with a robot? I often ask people, if I went to Barcelona and I went into a sex bordel with robots and had sex with a robot, can my wife sue me for divorce? Did I actually cheated on her or not? Right? If you will find your spouse with a robot, did they cheated on you or not? Suddenly it starts to be a little bit more uncomfortable. What about if I will tell you that China is planning to have people scanning their face before they go on the internet? Now there is silence. This is really, really uncomfortable. And this is the reality we actually live in when things are becoming more and more uncomfortable, and they need to be challenged. Personally, I love history, and I'm feeling very, very uncomfortable for a statement like that. If I would have lived in 1936, exactly in the same year that Charlie Chaplin introduced modern time, and I would have seen the New York Times coming with that statement, I would probably hang myself. Because that is the promise for humanity. And we have one of the most important thought, shapers newspaper in 1936 that is saying, screw humanity, we are never going to go to the stars. And of course, NASA took that one as a challenge, and we created the Saturn V, and where we went to the moon. But if you step back and you really think about the Saturn V, the original mission for Saturn V was never to carry us to the moon. It was intended to carry us for Mars. As a result, it's just an oversized engineered missile. But someone in NASA said, wait, Mars, that's too far away. I cannot see it with a naked eye. That's too fucking scary. And I'm so happy I can say fuck in Europe, because whenever I'm talking in the US, they say you have to say screw instead of that. So if you have any Americans, think I'm saying screw right now instead of fuck. But just, we strapped 3 astronauts and we put them to the moon because Mars was a very, very scary thought for us. We couldn't see it, we couldn't relate to it. And then came the visionary, Elon Musk, and he said, guys, you are thinking about it wrong. It's not about technology, it's about business models. Going to Mars should not cost so much money as going to the moon. And now we're on the way to Mars. But even these 2 events, landing on the moon and going to Mars, using the moon as a slingshot eventually, these 2 are not fundamental life-altering events. When Julius Caesar, before Julius Caesar became Julius Caesar, he stood outside of Rome, outside of the bank of the Rubicon, and says, the die is cast and cross the Rubicon. Crossing the Rubicon became a term for a fundamental shift in human perception. Landing on the moon and going to Mars are not a shift in human perception, but we did have a shift in human perception around 40 years ago when we put the Voyager in space. But we don't like to talk about the Voyager. It's not such a glorified mission. We read about it from time to time, we heard the name, but no one ever had a deep dive to understand what is the Voyager after all. Think about, if the moon mission and Mars mission are technology and business driven, the Voyager was philosophical mission by nature. We had 2 fundamental questions that we asked ourselves as humans. What are we going to do when we are going to encounter aliens? That was the first question. The second question is, how the hell are we going to maintain a constant data stream from an object that is just increasing its distance from itself to Earth? As a result, 40 years later, we got a technology that is still capable of sending us images back to Earth. Now look at your phone that you have in your hand. It's between 800 to 1,700 euro. These are the average prices of smartphones today. You go to the basement or in a train, you're losing reception. In 2019. I live in Sweden, which is the best country in the world, with the best train system in the world. I don't have fucking internet on the train. It doesn't work. Not the Wi-Fi, not the cell. But 40 years ago, we were capable of sending an object to space that we can still receive images from. What did we do different than we do today? We ask fundamental philosophical questions by their nature. The amount of collaborations that was put into the Voyager is unprecedented until today. And we love to talk about agricultural revolution, industrial revolution, digital revolutions. We say our ancestors, they were fucking farmers, and then our grandparents, they were working in factories, and we are working digital because you don't have fruit and vegetables today, right? Because farming doesn't exist today. Right? Because industry doesn't exist, because shoes are manufacturing inside of a computer. These are not, one revolution didn't replace each other. They were feeding on each other. And they are still feeding on each other. And because of digital tools, we have much better food today. We have much better industry today. Because of industry, we have much better digital goods today. They coexist next to each other. And if you want to know the real revolution, it actually happened in 1140, when Gutenberg invented the print, because this is when we started to share data. Actually, that's wrong. It started when Luther printed the first Bible. This is when we started to share data. This is the first Twitter account, right? Think about what Luther did when he printed the Bible. He says, Latin religion, too complicated. Fuck, let's put it in German so everyone can understand. This is where we started, at that point of time. And today, instead of using words, we're using code. That's the main difference. And the iPhone that you have in your hand is direct descendants of the Luther Bible. And if you didn't have interest of knowledge at that time, it doesn't matter how much computation power you have in your hand. The time doesn't matter. You show me how much time I have left. It's not really relevant, right? We love to talk about how we have so many companies that are disrupting our business models. Uber disrupted the taxi industry. Well, let's go back and look what happened before Uber. Before Uber, I needed a taxi, so I called the taxi service that picked me up from one place and dropped me in another place. What is Uber? You call a car that picks you up from point A and drops you in point B. Before in time, when you needed a taxi, you needed to remember the phone number for the taxi company. And then a rude receptionist answer, what do you want? I want a taxi. Where the fuck are you? go and find your address, right? Especially if you're in Spain, like me, doesn't speak Spanish, how you're going to pronounce the street names, right? But a rude taxi driver comes and picks you up. Where do you want to go? I want to go to the opera. Okay, let's find the navigations. Drop me in the opera. I take my credit card. He says, what the hell is that? I don't take card. I take only cash. Right? Uber came and changed all of that with a push of a button. They changed my mental model. But they didn't change the taxi industry. Actually, when Uber started, the original goal of Uber was to become a taxi business. But then their lawyer says, don't do that. The taxi industry is regulated like fuck. Call it car sharing. No one knows what that is. Right? Why Uber is not working in Spain or Germany and Sweden? Because we are civil law states, civil law countries. US is a common law. You can disrupt the tax business, because that's what Uber is all about, disrupting the tax business. Airbnb, right? The same thing. WeWork is like rest in peace right now, but they should not be on that slide, but it's just an example of how not to do things, right? Kodak, Nokia, WeWork. That's the story. Spotify and Netflix. Netflix changed the way we watch TV. They didn't change what you watch on TV. Everyone's telling Netflix is a technology company. No, Netflix is a TV company. And they are the dinosaur of the TV company today. If you had bad taste listening to music before Spotify, like Depeche Mode apparently, good taste. Yes, I love Depeche Mode. Guess what? If you listen to Spotify, you still have a bad taste in music. They changed the way we listen. They didn't change to what we listen. Because using technology as a claw hammer to take over a known business is not sustainable, not scalable, and it's definitely not innovative. Apple came into the content right now. Everyone is coming into the content. Tinder announced that they're going to produce a TV show based on whom of you are single, raise your hands and has Tinder. And if you're married and have Tinder, please raise your hands as well. I would love to see that. Wow. In Spain, no one have their guy. My 18 daughter has a Tinder, which is scary. If you think about Tinder, it's just a one-night stand-up. But they are producing TV series right now. Everyone is producing content. Just look outside. I read in the website for the conference that the amount of growth that is happened in the past few years, everyone is doing content. Everyone is doing content. And if everyone is going to content doesn't have strategic value anymore. And if content doesn't have strategic value anymore, you need to stop and ask yourself, what will happen tomorrow? The first thing you need to realize that we are in the pre-X and post-everything era. Everything is behind us. We need to start focusing on the X. But how are we going to do that if 100% of our leaders and executives has eyes in the back and they're clinging on things that are familiar because what is true is right and shouldn't be changed? It's the X that we should focus if we want to understand the changes. Yes, Blade Runner vision is not really here yet, but flying cars, the technology is part of our life. We don't have the infrastructure, but the technology is here. And while that will take a few more years, we can already have food being dropped to us if you're sitting on the 405 traffic jam between LA and hell, right? That's the 405, it's just hell. You can have hot food dropping into a traffic jam. Alibaba is doing it for a few years in China already. We have FedEx that experimenting with, dropping packages into people's homes. They are running this experiment in Dubai, but you can already see how many campuses in the US is using same type of technologies to deliver packages between the dorms in the campuses. We have a company in Seattle that is using AI to make the perfect pizza. Probably tastes like silicone, but if you think about it. But yes, they're using algorithms to make food, which is a very, very interesting approach. Spielberg, Ready Player One. We are more and more stepping into augmented reality and artificial realities and virtual realities, and people say, yeah, but that was a fantasy, and then you see what Facebook is doing with Facebook Horizon, and you understand that it's here and now. Right now, I have 4 kids, and it's always a fight. Don't have your phone on the table. What do I do when they are plugged? Right? I just need to change the IV? Because this is where we are actually going. We have brain implants. That picture is so much better after breakfast, I promise you. If you ever book me to a conference, make sure it's with breakfast because the gagging effect will be amazing. And people ask me, but how can you have brain implants? I have a chip in my hand and I'm going to have a few more chips because I cannot stand in front of people and talk about biohacking without hacking myself. It's just not fair, right? It's being fake, which Trump will like probably, but how can you, if you have a heart problem, are you not going to have a pacemaker? Yes, you would. If you have like a other problems. You will not have morphine pump. Yes, you would. In the 50s and 60s, we already put electrodes to treat Parkinson. So if there is enough value, we will go with these type of technologies. But it's not so far, because we already have the implants. They are part of us. And people say, yeah, that is a fake picture. It's a Photoshop. Yes, it's a Photoshop. But here is the real guy that is using it. It's Italian, 34 years old architect that got paralyzed from the neck down, and he's using that chip to control that extra skeleton and walk for the first time after so many years being paralyzed. And it's not science fiction. It's part of our life today. We have artificial and genetic modifications. If you follow what happened with the CRISPR recipe in China that the Chinese doctor used to make 2 twins immune to HIV, which is brilliant if you think about it. And the CRISPR recipe that he used is on eBay for less than $100, and a CRISPR kit is $34. How far before we start to experiment in the basement, like Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs build silicon computers, we are going to build babies? Well, it's already happening in a lot of basements. I have 4 kids, I don't want any other one, right? But that's $134, and you have perfect kids. We have simple blood tests that can predict how likely you are to die in the next 10 years. And I often ask how many of you, how many people are willing to take this blood test, but because you didn't answer on Tinder, I'm not going to ask you that question, right? We have prosthetic limbs that are capable of giving the person using them the feeling that he's actually holding a grape. You get back the feeling directly to your brain. DARPA is developing that. And it's very interesting because a few years ago, a prosthetic limb for a child was $50,000. $50,000. Today, prosthetic limb for a child is between $3,000 to $5,000. And the fun part is they're 3D printed, and the kids can decide the shapes, the colors, and a lot of them want prosthetic limb like Iron Man, and Superman, or Batman. And you give them back, dignity. And they go to normal schools with kids that are not disabled, and the healthy kids goes back home to the parents and says, but I want like that as well. So what do? Christmas present? Because how far are we for having body shops across the street that you're able to change your body parts? And it's part of our reality. Exactly like, you step into any Amazon Go in the US, you pick up grocery, as long as you have the app, you just step outside. And Amazon is building 3,000 of these shops in the next few years. Just pick up and leave. We have Alibaba that introduced the first completely robotic hotel. There are no humans working in this hotel. Everything is done with an app, with the robots. We have a coffee house in Japan that is using robots to serve people, but the robots are controlled by disabled people, which is fantastic, fantastic idea. And then every single goddamn hotel I'm coming, I need to use this to sleep in the morning. God damn it. It's like life, right? Trump is building a wall because let's build a wall because he wants the Great Wall of Trump, not just the Great Wall of China. But in truth is, we're more connected than ever before. Humanity is so connected that we cannot even understand the impact of these connectivities. So we live in a world that, we know how to operate everything, but we don't really know how anything really works anymore. And all of you here, right? Google became a verb. Just Google it. So you know how to Google everything, but you don't know what you're looking for anymore. And that's the challenge we have. We love to show this picture. It took the telephone 75 years to reach 50 million users, but only 35 days for Angry Birds to reach the same amount of people as users. I'm like, yeah, but for the telephone you needed an infrastructure. You needed people digging and sweating and sharing bloods and tears to put the cables in the ground. Without the telephone, you didn't have Angry Birds. You didn't have geeks that can develop Angry Birds. That's not the right comparison. The question you need to ask yourself is, what tools do you have in your organization to understand what is the economic impact of a technology like Angry Birds in only 35 days? That's the question, because we have 75 years to understand the economic impact of the phone. What is the economic impact of that picture when it's hitting 18, almost 19 million likes? That's the question you need to ask yourself. How many of you have the tools to understand these questions, right? Because this was the most liked pictures on Instagram until some idiot put that picture and that got 54 million likes. What the fuck? If there are millennials here, you help the Kardashians become millionaire. Applaud yourself for doing that. What's the economic impact of that? Because it's also on the Twitter page and Wikipedia page. I don't understand that. This doesn't exist anymore, right? This is my life with my kids. This is how kids observe reality. And at the end of the day, A lot of us are the last of the organic memory generation. I remember my childhood. Most of you remember your childhood. You remember playing outside. You remember the feeling of the mud, of falling and scratching yourself. Our 18-year-old daughter came back drunk from a party last week, actually. We were called to pick her up because she was too much shit-faced in the party. 18, you're allowed to drink. And we're allowing our kids to experiment, and it's their problem if they have hangover the day after. And we brought her home, and of course she puked, and my wife was washing there like she was 2 years old, and she was trying to climb the stair horizontally, and I needed to carry her up. And I'm too old for that shit anymore. And she didn't remember anything in the morning until we showed her the Instagram stream, because a friend made sure that the memories are being recorded. Right? Our kids doesn't need this to remember anymore. Everything is happening over there, and they're observing everything with digital eyes, and we're observing things with digital eyes. This is what you see. None of these people are real. All of them are generated by artificial intelligence. NVIDIA generated all of these images. They asked their AI, can you describe me a human, paint me a human, like the Little Prince, and that's what we got. Right? Amazon is launching now a service that is like Shazam for fashion. You take a picture of someone, and it will capture their clothes and match you of what Amazon having online. So next year, if you go to the US, mainly to Seattle, and someone is snapping a picture of you, it's not of you, right? It's not what you wear. That's how we of looking at reality right now. When I looked at the IBTM website, I went into About, and I was very captured by inspire the event world to deliver exceptional experience. I love that. It's a fantastic vision, mission statement, whatever it's going to be referred to. But then I walk around and I see screens, 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 screens. And we think that we are making experience better with screens. How do we make a fridge better? We put a fucking screen on it. Why does your fridge need a 17-inch screen? Are you going to watch Netflix on it? I have this exercise that I do with friends. Every time we see a fridge on a shop with a screen, we put Pornhub on it. I coming into a hotel, the juice machine has free, it's an iPad for the juice machine, and it has only 3 buttons on it, right? Orange juice, apple juice, water. Why does it need an iPad for these 3 buttons? So of course me and my wife put Pornhub on that because they don't lock the iPad. And people come to have juice, no, it's Pornhub. Because why? Why do we think screens makes what's better? Average age of putting a kid in front of a screen is 3 months old. 3 months old, we put a toddler in front of a screen. When were you put in front of a screen when you were a kid? The problem with screens is that, they are there to cater for dopamine. Every time you put a picture on Instagram, you're waiting for the likes because it's like this for yourself. You go on Facebook, you're waiting for the likes, 4 minutes, okay. Every time you post something, you're giving yourself a shot of dopamine. Dopamine is like heroin, gives you short span of happiness. And by doing that, we forget the bond of serotonin, which what makes us human. 350 million years old substance, and we are becoming addicted to dopamine. That's reality of life behind the screen. What happened when Elon Musk's vision of taking over your optic nerve is going to become true? Because they already have the prototype, and eyes are the ultimate screens. You're not going to observe, it's going to be from inside. That's how we are going to be connected. This is the place we are going to be connected. We like to think that we're observing information in screens, but machines are actually observing us so much more we are observing it. That's the cool truth. Because every time someone is putting like a sticker on the camera on the computer, I say, but you have an iPhone or Android, yes? We always carry a device in the pocket that looks at us and perceives us and try to understand who we are. And data doesn't exist behind screens anymore. We are part of the data. And the borders between the analog and the digital world are being completely crossed right now. And if they are crossed, we can start create a whole new set of interactions based on the fact that humans are now part of the data. That's how you create experience. Yes, it's required a set of new language to be developed and these are real science, by the way, which I love. And you will need to place things with the right context. That's the best placement I've ever seen in my life. I'm dying to meet the guy that did that because that's hell of a placement. But you need to understand the placement, like moving the traffic lights from here to here, because this is how we walk in the street, right? We are walking with the arrows down because this is how we are constantly texting. And apparently the steering wheel needs to be there because your phone is there when you put your phone there, so maybe you should move the steering wheel there. You need to create a whole new set of placement to have a better interactions with people. You know, I'm showing this picture, and everyone is saying, yeah, we have this. We are an advanced country, yes, but in Singapore, if you're a senior citizen, you can take your ID, you can put it on that, and you can take extra time to cross the road. That we don't have. That's the placement. And they're using this in order to train cameras to understand, to train algorithms to understand how senior citizens look like in order to automatically give them extra time to cross the road. We are very good at creating technologies, but when we are enslaving ourselves to it, it took me some time to see that this picture was actually in Israel. I was born and raised in Israel. I'm living for 20 years in Sweden. And people say, yeah, Israeli companies, they have a lot of startup. And then I see this stupid picture, right? So let's have a manual robot cleaning the automatic robot shop, because that's very smart. What's the first thing that your kids are looking for when you're going on vacation? Do we fucking have Wi-Fi? Right? Do I have enough battery? How much technology we created and enslave ourselves to it instead of liberating it to actually free us to explore life beyond the stars? No, but we are locking ourselves in anger towards the technology is not working, because we are slave to technology in the end of the day. You know, maybe the future should be about understanding why people do certain things and why people experience. This was actually in 2018 one of the most wanted gifts for senior citizens in the US, because it makes sense. How many companies you think actually look at that picture and look at that trend and says, oh shit, there is actually a new product here? Because all of the things we do, we are placing our prices based on production, not based on usability. We're not going and trying to understand how people are actually using stuff. 5 seconds, I have 3 slides. Okay? Play the music so I can feel like the Oscar giving a speech, which I'm always wanted. Right? Innovation is not about, putting a statement and then blocking it. Maybe, I think the original thought was to kill cyclists so we can reduce human population, which I can go with that. But in the end of the day, it's about the freedom of creation. And that's what experience should be, about the freedom of creation. Perfect, thank you. Right? We live in a world of politically correct, and at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if you're he, she, or it, or any other combination. Just wash your fucking hand when you leave the toilet. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aric Dromi. That was absolutely fantastic. And good to see it. Standing room only.